Hi everyone. This is my lesson for Mary Longman's family-inspired trees. So I'm going to be adapting for this lesson for deaf and hard of hearing students, and I'm specifically modeling it for my 7th grade classroom with a hard of hearing student. Okay. So the original lesson, I am working from Day 1, Lesson 1, and just to read the background on the original lesson, it was beginning class with a brief discussion with the nature of drawing, explaining students that are not drawing cartoon or illustrative trees, and instead they are looking closely at actual trees, drawing what they see in a more realistic manner. The lesson describes a teacher will give an example of a cartoon tree versus a realistic tree, and then each student is going to be given pencil, paper to start doing their own drawing activity. Usually we will go to 3 paces around the school in the original lesson, drawing trees from life. So for my lesson, we will be drawing from photographs. Because it's Montana and we've had snow the last 4 days, we'll be working inside for this lesson. And because I am adapting this lesson for deaf and hard of hearing, I am going to be doing a little more visual explaining and giving some more handouts for that student. And I'll also be adding in a presentation to introduce the artist a little bit, which was not in the original lesson. So the specific adaptations I'm going to be working with is visual direction and handouts to break down the information in addition to verbal. My student is hard of hearing, so they have hearing aids. They just need to be a little closer. Student has preferential seating near the teacher, so in this lesson the student would be sitting right next to me, right near our smartboard. After lessons, checking for understanding. During the lesson, check for classroom volume. While I'm giving the lesson, that's not an issue, but once we move into breakout spaces, just making sure the classroom volume level is good and just respectful of that student's needs. Using caption when using video media. For this part of the lesson, there's not a video, but if we did, we would have captions. Repeating, rephrasing information when necessary, breaking down large assignments into smaller pieces, check for understanding, posting critical information for assignments, visually on the board, printed, and on our school electronic platform, Manage Back. So those are the adaptations for this student that I'll be including most of those in this lesson. All right, so let me just get this set up. All right, so for this lesson, we are going to be learning about Mary Longman's family-inspired trees. So Mary, a little bit there, perfect. So Mary Longman is an Indigenous Canadian artist. Themes in her artwork address Indigenous identity, cultural resilience, awareness about social and environmental issues, and the effect and impact on Indigenous communities. And that's a picture of our artist outside of one of her sculpture installations. So this next step, we are going to continue to practice visual analysis. So if we all remember from our last project, we are breaking down what we visually see and trying to get a little bit of an understanding for the artwork through what we're observing. So what do we see and what do we think this sculpture might be built out of? Obviously, there's not students in our classroom right now, but I would hope they would start to break down this sculpture by talking about maybe the textures they're noticing. I would hope they would start to guess that maybe this sculpture is built out of wood. They might notice the natural forms in the branches. They might also notice that there is an actual family picture in the center of the tree, the heart of the tree. They might notice the roots kind of holding down the sculpture, maybe some of the shadows. And I'd also hope that my students might notice some of the more delicate nature of the upper branches that are breaking off from that center, more sturdy root. So once students broke down that visual analysis of the sculpture, I'd share a little bit about what her intentions were for the sculpture. So the Strata and Routes sculpture is exploring interconnections of Indigenous people and their land, her culture, some of the history of her people, familial communal ties, and pathways of movements and migration that have shaped the Indigenous experience over time. So those are some of the concepts and key ideas that our artist is thinking about. And as we move on today, we are going to be drawing our own trees. And later in our project, we're going to be connecting that to our own family tree. But the first step is to practice drawing realistic trees. So in this image, we are going to be really breaking it down and looking at it like a scientist. We might even be counting branches or noticing the texture of the bark, or how maybe the branches move from a thick to a thin. Maybe they're really delicate and wispy at the end. But we're going to be really breaking this down and looking at this like a scientist. So here are our visual directions for our activity. These are also posted to ManageBack. And so for the first step, we are going to be finding a photograph on our Chromebooks. If it was a little warmer in the spring, we'd be going outside to our garden to draw from life. But we're still going to be connecting a lot of these ideas to our fall life drawing project, where we're really breaking things down and slowing down and looking at things more like a scientist, not what we think we know about the object. So once we find our photograph of a tree, we're gonna maybe look at the leaves, the needles, what are we seeing, what are we noticing. Once we've gathered some of that information, we're gonna start practicing drawing what we see. So we're moving away from that illustrative cartoon tree and we're working towards more our realistic drawing from life idea of the tree. And this might take a few tries. We're starting in our sketchbook, just practicing this skill. So it's fine to have a few tries. We're just working towards more and more of a realistic drawing. Perfect. So we are going to move over to our demonstration table, and I have some handouts for everybody too. Okay, so we have our first handout with those directions that break down the parts of the tree and also just kind of review those step-by-step instructions. And I also have a handout of our slideshow for anyone who just might want to take a closer look, slow down, and just absorb a little more of that information. So at all of our tables, we have our graphite drawing pencil sets with a variety of grades of pencils. If you guys remember or look back to the notes in our sketchbook on our value scale and our pencil grades, we have a range of our harder graphites that are our lighter colors that are H, 2H, 4H, we got a regular H and HB, all the way to our darker shades, our 6B and our 4B. And we also have erasers in our kit and some rulers. So you guys are going to find your own pictures, but just for the purpose of our demo and breaking things down, we're just going to use this picture for now. Let's see if we can get the camera on our paper. hopefully we can see that in our video. Okay, so first thing we're gonna do is we are going to start by noticing in our picture, where is the center line of our tree? And you guys are gonna be drawing a little bit lighter with our H's, but just so it's a little easier for everyone to see, I'm gonna start with a softer, darker graphite. So we're gonna look and try and find that center line of the tree. There we go. The next thing we might notice is, where is the horizon line in our image? So you might draw in that horizon line. And those two things are already starting to break our image down into smaller sections so we can really look and slow down and make sure we're drawing accurately. So the next thing I might notice about this tree is the base of the tree is pretty thin. So I might start to just draw a little bit of that base. The next thing I'm noticing is the tree kind of breaks into almost a Y shape. So just like our life drawing project, when we were using our own photographs for our still life images and using our grid technique, you can still translate those angles for our tree. So we're going to use our ruler to maybe break down some of those angles. So I'm noticing right off the bat, the tree breaks off into this Y. Same with this side. And now we have the base structure of our tree. Later we might notice that the horizon line actually has some hills in here. We could draw some of those in. But then we're going to be focusing on the major sections of the branches, starting to figure out where are those thicker branches. And this main branch actually breaks up into another pretty big part here. And this side, let's see, it goes up and then it starts to break off. And then you can start to kind of figure out some of these more smaller, delicate branches. And eventually, once you kind of have things figured out, you can start to add some value, thicken things up. And you guys will draw a lot lighter than I am, just so you can erase and build on your drawing as you figure out the different shapes. But I'm drawing darker just so everybody can see a little bit more easily. So you guys are just going to keep building until you start to have a more realistic tree, using our same concepts from our life drawing project. Perfect. So that's like a nice start, a nice base to go from there. So what I want everyone to do next, we're going to get our Chromebooks. There's paper at each table, and from there you're going to start your drawings. And if you forget any of the directions, we've got our handouts at each table. So you guys can head to your seats and start working. I'll be around to kind of check in with everybody. And then once I have all the students working independently, that's when I would start to do my check for understanding with my deaf and hard of hearing students. With him, I most likely just start by asking what he thinks, what he maybe might want to do for his project, what kind of tree. And once we started talking and he was feeling comfortable, I could start to kind of just check to see if he was understanding the material and the lesson. Then I would just make sure he doesn't have any additional questions. If I was starting to notice that he maybe missed something, whether it was a concept or some idea, I would just take this time while everyone else is starting to work to kind of just check and make sure he was where he needed to be. But other than that, students would start working and I'd be checking around with each student and making sure the volume of the class was a little lower, just to be sensitive to a deaf or hard of hearing students' hearing aids or any of those needs. All right, and that's about it, guys. Thank you.